Hi, it's Colin. Make sure to subscribe to the Volume YouTube channel so you don't miss any episodes. You know, like Eli Manning did.
Eli's late. Hey, we're on this interview. You calling in? What are you doing?
What?
We're on this interview.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, I forgot about it.
You're killing me. You're killing me.
I think Aaron should stay in Green Bay, and I think they're going to rip his contract up and re-sign him. I think they are. Russell is not happy. That's fluid. Deshaun Watson, Denver feels right to me, goes where he goes. But it's really interesting when you look around, Mike. We got 10 teams that need a quarterback. There's no great college quarterbacks. I wonder, give me your insight on this. If somebody came to Seattle and said 7 first-round picks and a starting corner, do you think they'd move him?
Russell Wilson?
Yep.
I don't think it's going to take that. I mean, I'm curious in many ways about Seattle because I went through this in 2017. I went up there before they played the Rams late in that season, and you'll remember it was a changing of the guard game. The
Yes.
Sean McVay,
Yes.
Jared Goff Rams came in and just smoked them. And
Yes.
I remember telling Aaron Donald, he was so good that game. I remember telling him after the game in that little locker room, you should have walked off the field like in the third quarter and demanded to renegotiate. Like that's how good he was. And I wrote coming out of that game, I said, listen, they're blowing it all up. The Seahawks, as we know them, are going to be gone. We're talking Bennett and Sherman and eventually Earl and other Cam is going to go, Averill, with injuries. And I said, they're going to rebuild around Bobby Wagner on defense as the centerpiece and Russell. And then I said, does Pete Carroll want to stick around for this? And it was a fair question. I mean, he was, late 60s at the time. And, Pete's been so good. Does he want to stick around for a rebuild? Now, he did. They did rebuild on the fly, and they were amazing. They got back to the playoffs and, right away. And, now they're in maybe an even, more glaring place where you could argue for the rebuild. And if Russell doesn't want to be there and you want to rebuild, and I think they have a phenomenal GM in John Schneider, if you're Pete, are you like, I don't know, man. Now, I know Pete has so much confidence in his ability to find those guys, the Richard Shermans and the Cam Chancellor, along with John Schneider, and to fit them into his defense and to make it cool. But he already got rid of, he's already done staff turnover a ton, including last year. Russell had 1 foot out the door last offseason, and they patched that up. I think they maybe organizationally, I could see a scenario where Pete and Russell are gone. I don't know.
It's interesting because I said the other day I'd move Bobby Wagner. I'd get a 3rd-round pick. I'd go to Russell and try to renegotiate his contract. I'd keep Dwayne Brown. If I could move Jamal Adams and get the right trade back, I'd do it. But they are so bad on the right side of the offensive line, center, right guard, right tackle. They're so weak at corner. The defensive front is hit and miss. There are a lot of times in the NFL there's a team that's rebuilding that doesn't want to acknowledge it's rebuilding. Yeah. It feels like the Giants are a prime example. They're actually rebuilding. They think they've got players. They're rebuilding. They really don't have the players. Seattle is rebuilding. So
and by the way, if you miss on the quarterback, that means you're still rebuilding. That's a Giants. Like if they had hit on the quarterback, and talk about talking yourself into someone and drafting them high in Daniel Jones, if that was a hit, it wouldn't matter. They'd be the Bengals, right? They'd be like, well, we don't have everything, but we can win now because the quarterback's so good. But they have Daniel Jones, so it's like, who can we fire to keep Joe Judge employed another year?
So finally, Mike Silver here, finally. I went back and looked at the last 15 years in the NFL. On average, 7 coaches get replaced. So we know the Raiders are going to have a new coach. That's 1. And I said, Vic Fangio and Matt Nagy feel like 2 and 3. But, Fangio beats the Chargers. They hang around. I think they need a quarterback more than a coach. I think they'll go heavy after Deshaun Watson. And am I missing something here? So Nagy's probably out. Raiders absolutely have a coach. I think Fangio, they probably go young, progressive, offensive mind. But Lincoln Riley's now off the market. He's at USC. Is there any coach I'm missing here that's on the hot seat that I'm not mentioning? Because it averages 7 a year.
Yeah, well, first of all, there's always a surprise. There's always a surprise. But, let's see how the Vikings finish. That could turn bad fast, right?
I like Mike Zimmer, though. I like him. I do.
Oh, I love him. Well, here's what you get with Mike Zimmer and Vic Fangio. This is the argument. They're so good schematically, and Fangio's like next level. Like, if these guys are so good schematically on defense that they might not be your perfect head coach, but then you like having that. Like, even when the Broncos aren't that good, there'll be a couple games this year where you're like Dallas this year. Like, how did Denver beat Dallas? Vic Fangio got in, Kellen Moore and Dak Prescott's head for that one game because he's just really good at that. But, I think you look at will Urban stay? Probably. I think you look at, are the Lions for sure going to roll with Dan Campbell, or are they going to try to get the other Campbell again and, maybe succeed this time? I'm not trying to start stuff. I'm just saying, here we are. There's a long way to go. Also, teams can tail off fast. And we could see, a team we think is doing pretty well all of a sudden just fall off the cliff. And by the way, it's a business. If the Giants won Sunday, good for them. The offense still looked crappy, but they did win. If they go 4-12 and fans are booing and or 4-13 and it looks really, really bad, are we sure Joe Judge is coming back? I would say no.
I will say this though. People bailed on Brian Flores. Have you noticed? Tua's got limitations, but basically their recipe is Tua's accurate, limit his exposure, win with defense, special teams, and run game. I watched Miami now back-to-back weeks. I watched every snap today, and I'm like, you're not going to win a Super Bowl that way. You can win 9 games in this league, 10 games playing that way.
I get frustrated, though. Like, remember a couple of years ago where, the Falcons finished strong, and they're like, we're keeping Dan Quinn because they played hard for him and they finished strong. And I'm like, so he doesn't get dinged for their season being over in November because they were so unprepared and so bad. And I like Dan Quinn, obviously. I'm just saying, you're right. The Dolphins are playing well, but I can't talk about Flores without being like, what the hell were they doing? Like, how do you start that way? As a serious team that almost made the playoffs last year and might have had they played Fitzpatrick the whole way, how do you start that way? It's so bad.